really should have told earlier, I think. It's about a fascinating woman. When I told about how I moved into the old city and how Ismail, Uncle Joe, he was called, gave me this great big heavy key to the house. I didn't talk too much about what happened afterwards, and I was very fortunate because shortly after, this lady comes walking in, marching in, I would say, and said, "Hello, Ismail told me you're living here. I have to see what the house looks like." And she went in and circled around and came out, and she wasn't really happy because the windows were broken because of the war, and I couldn't afford glass. I sort of boarded them all up, and she said, "It'll be dark for you, but the house is livable," and she went away like that. So I really learned who the boss was in certain things in their home. She certainly was not the boss about what he did with his time, that's for sure. Anyway, one day I was coming home from the university, and Uncle Mustache, don't know if I mentioned him or not, so I'll start again. As you come in from the flower gate of the old city, after 50 yards, there's a small restaurant with a picture of a big man with a great big mustache, and it said Uncle Mustache's Restaurant in English. And usually outside he would be sitting. He was a big, heavy-set man with a mustache that went like that all the way up, and he was a man with a heart of gold, actually. There was one addict who lived in that restaurant for at least 3 months while I was there, and never had any money to pay him. But 6 months after this boy got back to Ireland, Mustache received a check in Irish pounds to cover all of his expenses. So things worked out for him. Anyway, I'm walking in, and he looks at me as I'm going past, and he says, "You have a guest?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Yes, a woman, not a good woman." And I say, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You'll see." All this in English, not such good English, but English. At the time I spoke no Arabic. And he said, "You'll see." So I walked to my house, and there she is, a tall, good-looking woman in a very, very, very short mini skirt. And I didn't know her from Adam. And she said, "I've been working at Kibbutz Urim, and I decided to come to Jerusalem, and I asked if they knew a place I could stay. And they told me to come looking for you by Uncle Mustache." So this is what I did. And I was a little bit confused. And I said, "But there's only one bed, and it's not that big." And she said, "It's okay, I've got a sleeping bag, I'll sleep on the floor." So, what am I going to do? Can't send her back to the kibbutz. I open the door, bring her in, show her the one bed on the floor, and my desk where I did my reading with the lamp, and that's it. That's what the place looked like. And she says, "Okay." She sits down, and she's ready to start talking, and I say, "I don't know, look, I'll go get some food from Uncle Mustache. I won't have to bother trying to cook up a meal." I go to Uncle Mustache, I bring 2 meals in, set them up on the table, we sit down to eat. We just begin to eat, and there's a knock on the door, a really strong knock. And I get up, and I have to go out. There's a gate leading into our yard, and only then do you get to the door. And she was knocking at the gate. So I go out, I open the gate, and there she is, Awadia. Awadia was Ismail's wife and mother of his 5 children. And she walks in with a nice smile on her face, and she looks around and she says, I see you have company. So I said, yes. She's from the kibbutz, and she looks at the room and she says to this lady, finish eating, I'll sit here, but you need a place to sleep, you'll come with me, and everything is okay. And the woman started to say, but no, I'm here. And she said, it's all right, everything will be all right. And she just sits down and is quiet, doesn't say a word until we finish a very silent meal. Takes her, brings her out, and she slept in her house, which is nearby. And it was much better for me because I really didn't know who I was getting and what was going on there. So that was really the first time I saw her in action. The next day I came to have coffee, as I used to, on off days when I didn't have to go to the university early, or if there was a lockdown, which happened frequently. And she's making coffee, and friends of hers would come in to have their fortunes told. And she would tell the fortune on the coffee. We use the coffee to tell, and receive a tip for it. She says, "Would you like me to take to read your fortune?" So I said, "No, some other time," figuring that it's a sham. I mean, what am I going to do? I think she understood my feelings, because she never asked me again until my last week in the house in the old city. A week before I left, and only then did she mention it. She was a very strong woman. Whenever I visited her, she showed me pictures of Hebron, where she was born and raised, and the hospital where she worked as a nurse. And she still made money as a nurse while living in the old city, because people who needed to get injections would get the prescription from the doctor, but instead of going to an infirmary or finding a nurse in the hospital who would be willing to give the injection, which cost a lot of money, they went to her and she gave them the injections and made a little money on the side, because Ismail wasn't always accurate in how he brought money home. Whiskey he brought home all the time. So anyway, that's the way it was. She made a living that way. And I learned from her something very important, something that my chanichim in the various workshops that I ran in the years afterwards keep reminding me that I always said. Because I got there one day around 9:30 in the morning. We're sitting, talking, and I'm almost getting ready to go at around 11, and she said, "Would you like to stay for lunch?" And I said, "Oh boy, that's a good idea." I said, "Yes." So she said, "Okay." And she says, "Just sit." So I'm sitting, and I hear her yelling at the kids, and she comes back smiling, sitting down, and I hear all kinds of noise going on outside in the yard. And after a while, I hear the chickens that were there screaming, and I look out, and I see they caught a nice big fat chicken. And Muhammad, the older one, he was like the boss. They had a stand there, and he stretches the neck, cuts off the head. The chicken goes running around. And I'm sitting there, and she's smiling, and we're talking. And then I realized that then they have to pick the feathers, and then they have to open up the chicken. And somewhere around 3 in the afternoon, she began cooking, preparing the cooking, and a little after 5 in the evening, we had our lunch. At that point, I recognized something that I'd seen already with visits to the Bedouin there, that time doesn't really exist when you're living a simple life from day to day. And it's really a concept that started in the West, in Western thinking, because we value our lives, and so we have to measure it. And the minute we begin to measure things, we have our math, and then Aristotle comes and says A is not non-A, and everything works from there on in. There's a certain kind of Western thinking, but Eastern thinking just doesn't take time into consideration. And that was very important for me. It showed me something about the way we live, and how important our lifeline is, because we only live once. And because of that, we really have no way of seeing the future. And that's why we have so much trouble with the climate crisis now, because everybody wants to live his own life and doesn't think too far in advance. In the end, I was there for a whole year. And then in other stories I told about what happened when Ismail was caught with drugs, and I went to his trial. Around a week before I left the old city, I came in for my usual cup of coffee, and Awadia says, "Would you like me to read your fortune?" Now a whole year went by. The first time she asked, I said no, and that was it. Now she's asking, so I said, okay, let's see. So we sit, I get my cup of coffee, I drink it out all the way, take it, look at it, swirl it if I can. There's not much to swirl in there. Turn it upside down, bang on the table. And that's what I saw them doing all the time, so I knew. And she picks it up and she looks, and she looks, and she looks, and slowly she begins to smile. And she said, sometime in the next few days, you're going home. So I said, yes, to your kibbutz. I said, yes. She says, you'll get a suggestion for something to do, and it'll mean a whole change in your life. And then she looks a little bit more, and she says, I don't know what it is, I don't know what kind of change it'll be, I just see that in the future it will be good for you. So I said, okay. I said to myself, she knows I'm finishing, she knows I'm going away back to a kibbutz, and it's a reasonable fortune to make up, and she wanted to give me something positive. So that's what I thought, until I got back to the kibbutz, and there was a message for me. I had to call Ichud Habonim first thing in the morning, Sunday morning. I called the movement, the youth movement for Habonim, and they say they had workshops, that groups that would come for a year to work on the kibbutz and learn about the country, and then go back and teach or come back to Israel. Anyway, she said, your kibbutz is supposed to get our next group, but we don't have more than 15 children lined up that passed the screenings, and we need you to go to America. You have a couple of weeks' time to see if you can get more people in and bring the group to Israel with you. If you have more than 18, everything will be fine. So I got there, and I asked, there was this woman, a social worker, who turned down most of the applicants all the time. So I asked her for the names of a few applicants that she turned down, I received them in. I got the 19. We only had 18 in the end, but I got the 19. And I got the chance to visit my parents and visit Aunt Hertie and Debbie and Gary. First time in my life I saw them. And Clarence, of course. So it was really good. And things changed for the better. Afterwards, I went and I saw Wadea a few times, and I had to help her out a little bit while her husband was gone. But that was it. So I don't know what people think about reading coffee and reading your future, and I don't know if it was a lucky guess or if she just wished me well and made up something, or she could really read something. I do know that we don't know everything about the world because of the way we're built. We only see a certain small angle of the whole universe. Thank you all.